everyone, so today I have a Glitterature on the book Divergent by Veronica Roth, and this is a book that I actually went to the bookstore to get and they were sold out, so I ended up having to buy it online because my bookstore said that they couldn't keep it in stock, so it must be a really good seller. And this was suggested to me by a couple of you guys in the comments section, and I made a big list of books that I wanted to check out, and then I kind of read the recaps online on barnesandnoble.com and fell in love with the way this one sounded. This is going to be a rave book review because this is kind of equal in my mind to The Maze Runner, which is another book that I did a Glitterature on that I loved and I suggest to everyone. This is like that. This is just as good. If you liked The Maze Runner, if you like Hunger Games, if you like kind of dystopian themed books, this was such a good book. So I finished this book in one day. It is not a skinny book. This is a pretty thick book. I was drinking my coffee one morning, and normally I do things while I drink my coffee. Like I either get on the phone and talk to someone, or I answer emails, or I write blog posts for EllesGlitterGossip. I'm always like doing something while I'm drinking my coffee in the morning. But this morning I was just like, not this morning, the morning that I read this book, I was just I just wanted to like take my coffee and get back in bed and read a couple of chapters of this book. By the time I realized what was going on, I was 10 chapters in, completely absorbed in the story, didn't want to put the book down, but I did have things I had to do that day. Like I couldn't just stay in bed reading all day. So I got all my work done and I sat down with this book and I did not go to sleep till I finished it. It was so good. And the sequel comes out in May and I cannot wait. Like I'm gonna get it the day it comes out. This was such a good book. So basically I'll give you guys a summary of the book and then I'll tell you guys when spoilers are gonna start and I'll talk about how I feel about the book for those of you that have read it. This is a dystopian book similar to The Maze Runner and similar to the Hunger Games. Society has completely broken. It's been destroyed by wars and all of this stuff. And this book actually takes place in the city of Chicago, but it's not Chicago anymore. And what happens is humans have separated into 5 different groups of people, and they're called factions. So there's 5 factions and they're all based on a human ideal that they feel is the opposite of what they think the world ended with. So whatever they think mankind's downfall was, they do the opposite. So the main one that you find out about at the very beginning of the book is called Abnegation, and they're the Selfless. So they believe that mankind fell apart, society fell apart because man was too selfish. They believe that people, if they had been more selfless and helped other people out more and relied less on greed and all of those things, that the society wouldn't have fallen apart and humans would be much happier. So in Abnegation, they strive to be selfless, and it's very extreme. Like they have to all wear gray clothing. They all have to eat very plain food because they believe that anything fun or extravagant is just like gluttony and just too much. So they don't even have hamburgers, and that's actually like kind of a storyline. The first time the girl gets a hamburger in another faction, she's like so like confused as to what it is because she's so used to like plain food. They're not allowed to have mirrors, and they spend their time helping each other and helping the other factions and helping what's called the factionless, which are the people that don't survive initiation, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. So they're kind of like the charity faction. Like they basically give charity to people and they give everything away, and they don't think that they should have anything fun or, you know, anything extravagant. They just believe that everyone would be much happier if everyone just took care of each other. So that's like the one that the main character of the story, Beatrice, is born into. And then the other main one that's talked about in this book is called Dauntless, and they're the brave. So they believe that mankind was destroyed by people being cowards and not standing up for each other and just kind of letting people walk all over each other and not having enough boundaries, I guess. So they are categorized by wearing black clothing, being really tattooed, having lots of piercings, which I think is really stereotypical, but that's just how it's described in the book. And they're like little daredevils. So their main job is to protect the fence around the city. And it actually kind of hints in the book that the fence is a very suspicious thing. Like the main character, Beatrice, mentions a couple times that she doesn't know what they're keeping out. And there's even one point in the book where she mentions that she thinks the locks might be on the outside and she doesn't know why they're keeping them in. My theory is that the rest of the world might not actually be like this, that society might not be falling apart everywhere, and that it's more of like these 5 factions are kind of like the Hunger Games in the sense of like complete government control and like kind of a cult, and all these ideas are starting to be brainwashed into people. So I don't know that for a fact, though. The sequel, I think, might explain that one a little bit more. And then the other three factions are Candor, which is the honest, so they cannot lie. They don't believe that humans should lie. They believe that mankind was destroyed by lying and deceiving and stuff, so they're very honest and open, and they tell everyone how they feel, good or bad. And then the Erudite is the intelligent, so they believe that mankind was destroyed because they didn't have enough knowledge, so they study all the time. Like, each faction is super, super extreme in their ideals. And then the last one is Amity, which is the peaceful, and they believe that mankind was destroyed by aggression and violence and war, and that's actually the one I would be if I was in this world. So what happens is you're born into a faction, you're raised there for 16 years, and one day a year, all the 16-year-olds come together and they have a choosing ceremony, and they get to choose if they want to stay in their faction that they were born and raised in, or if they want to switch faction. But if they do that, they can never come back. They always have to be in that faction, even if they find out they've made a mistake, and they can never see their family again. But actually, there is a visiting day where they get to see their family, and they do get to see their family because the factions do mix a little bit. Like, it's one city. They believe in faction before blood, so they believe that your faction should be more important than your family if you are a transfer. So it's just really intense and really a big decision. And the day before your choosing ceremony, you have a test done to you where they stimulate all of your brain patterns, and they have this really scientific process that tells you which faction you should be in based on what characteristic is strongest in your brain. But you don't have to pick the faction that you're supposed to be in. You can pick any faction you want. So the main character of the book, Beatrice, goes into this testing room, and this is a spoiler, so I've kind of given the summary. Now I'm going to go into spoilers a little bit. Not crazy intense ones, but I am going to be discussing the plot a little bit more, so you can click out of this if you have decided whether you want to buy this book. And anyway, okay, so on to the story. So Beatrice, when she goes into this stimulation testing room, she actually gets a really rare result. She is equally compatible with 3 of the factions of the 5. They only rule out 2 for her. And so that is considered being divergent. So that's what the title of the book is, because if you are like equally good with different factions, you're called divergent, and it's actually really dangerous, not to yourself but to the government, because the whole thing is the government is trying to like control all of these people, and they figured out a way to confine people based on their strongest personality. So say you have a child who has a really strong disposition to being honest. You know those kids like that just cannot lie, like they just believe innately really strongly about honesty. There are some kids that are really strongly about like being peaceful and being not fighting. That's how I was. Like I like to smooth over the waters. I don't like confrontation. And so take this kid that is extremely honest and then put them into a society where that is the most important personality trait, and you are punished if you are dishonest. You basically become brainwashed in a way, because the entire society is forcing you to kind of expand on your strongest emotion. Anyway, my point is, for the people that are divergent, that can kind of see through different ones and feel equally brave, honest, and selfless, which is I think the 3 that she is, for those people, they can see through that brainwashing a little bit. So they're just super dangerous. The government wants to kill them, and that's why she's special. So she transfers from Abnegation, which is the selfless, to Dauntless, which is the brave. And then basically the biggest part of the story is actually the initiation. Once you choose your faction, you have to go through initiation. Even if you stay in the faction you were born and raised in, you still have to go through initiation. But the thing is, most of I think actually all of them except Dauntless take all of their initiates. Like, as long as you do what they tell you to do. Like, I know for Abnegation, it talks about how you have to do 30 days of charity work, like community service, because they believe in community service. Well, anyone can do 30 days of community service. Like, it's not like you're going to fail at it and they're going to kick you out. But if for some reason you don't finish your initiation, you become factionless, which means you are never part of any faction, and you become a homeless person and you live on the streets, and Abnegation basically takes care of you because they believe in charity, so they give you food and stuff. But you're homeless, you have no family, you have no friends, like it's the worst possible life that you could get. The author did talk about a couple of the factions initiations, and they kind of fascinated me. Like for Candor, which is the honesty one, they are given this truth serum, kind of like in Harry Potter, where they absolutely have to tell the truth, and they're sat in front of the entire faction and they're asked all of these super embarrassing personal questions. And the theory is if you get everything out in the open and you get all of your most embarrassing thoughts and moments out in the open, then you'll have nothing to hide. So that's kind of like the thought process. Again, it goes back to kind of brainwashing in a way. And I don't know what the knowledge one or the peaceful one's initiation is. Dauntless, actually, it has a super intense initiation, and they cut a bunch of people. So there's like between 20 and 25 initiates between the transfers and the Dauntless born initiates, and they're only going to take 10 total. 15 of them are either going to be dead or factionless by the end of initiation. So it's really intense. It's a really horrible initiation. A lot of brutality, a lot of beating each other up, a lot of violence. It's not a good faction. It's just such a cruel lifestyle. But Beatrice ends up going by Triss when she transfers to Dauntless, because she thinks it's like more of a less goody two shoes, like Abnegation kind of name. And she's a pretty strong personality. Like she's pretty good in the book. I don't know what I would do if I was her, but she's pretty good. And like I said, she's divergent, so there's that whole like underlying thing of the danger behind that. And then at the very end, like this huge thing happens that I didn't see coming that kind of just steers the story, I guess, towards the sequel. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like I could talk about this book for a really long time. I really, really enjoyed this book. I think the author was really creative with coming up with this world where humans split up based on their ideals, and it becomes really extreme, and it's interesting. Like it kind of makes sense. Like those 5 ideals seem to work really well with one another in the book. Like it makes sense that they can be a society as one, but they're constantly fighting amongst each other, and they all believe that they're the better faction. And I think that it was a very interesting, unique book. I don't think that I felt like it was very repetitive or that I had read stories similar to it. I just think it was really unique and kind of kept me on my toes because I didn't know what was going to happen next. And I really liked that about this book. So I do wish that they had gone into a little bit more detail on some of the other factions. Like you don't really learn anything about Candor or Amity with like how they live or you basically just know that they're peaceful and honest. You don't know anything else about them. You learn a little bit more about Erudite, or the knowledge one, just because her brother transfers into that one. So you just learn a tiny bit about that one, and then you learn about Dauntless and Abnegation pretty well. So hopefully in the second book it will go into the other factions a little bit more, because I think that's really interesting just to kind of visualize what all of these different factions are like. But I am interested, based on this little review, if you read the book or if you haven't, write a comment below with which faction you think you would be in, and I'll put in the comment box below the 5 factions with what they are, so if you need to be reminded of which one's which if you haven't read the book. But I just think that'd be interesting, because I know that some people will probably say every single, like there will probably be people for each one, because I think that they are pretty strong kind of personality traits for each one. So I don't know, I just think that's interesting. Totally recommend this book. We'll be getting the second one and doing a Glitterature on that one as well. I think like if this sounds good to you, like run out to the bookstore and get it like right now and start it tonight, because it's that good. So I'm just excited. Like I wish I could erase my memory and reread it, because it was just one of those books. So I hope you guys enjoyed this Glitterature, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.